Hello, good friends and neighbors. We are back with yet another thrilling episode of No Filters Media. I'm Sly James, co-founder of Wickham James Strategies and Solutions. I'm here with my good friend, Joni Wickham. I have been the former mayor of Kansas City. Joni was my chief of staff, absolutely irreplaceable part of our team. I've written a couple of books, Opportunity Agenda, a book with my good friend Winston Fisher to build the middle class, and Passion for Purpose, which was really more autobiographical and political philosophy. Joni is here with me today. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hey everybody, Joni Wickham, co-founder of Wickham James Strategies and Solutions, author of the best-selling book, The Thin Line Between Cupcake and Bitch. I'm more cupcake today than bitch, but that could always change. I guess
from her perspective. You know,
everything's relative, right?
Yeah, very fluid, very fluid. You know, there's in recent years, since the pandemic, and believe me, it seems like days, but it's actually been a couple of years. There has been this whole thing about work. People were absolutely shocked that they couldn't find people to fill positions that they had normally filled when things started to reopen. That nobody, according to people I was talking to sometimes, particularly older white men, the reason was that nobody wanted to come back to work because the government was giving them all this money. And they were just lazy and staying at home. Really? You really think that? Have you ever thought maybe that people didn't want to go back to working the useless, worthless jobs where they were treated like crap and underpaid? Maybe they found something better to do, or they said, you know what, I've gotten along without it and I can get along without it again. All sorts of different things. But I think the issue of what's happening with our workforce is a lot more complicated than they got unemployment benefits when they were forced out of their jobs by the pandemic.
Yeah, that's kind of a short-sighted assumption, I think. Yeah.
Well, I think it's one of those things, once again, that comes back from another subject that we have talked about, which is people don't understand how government works and a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I looked at the pandemic as one of those watershed moments in history that caused, all by itself, a course change in something that was absolutely fundamental about American society and society in general.
Yeah, well, it was a crisis.
Yeah.
Economic crisis, clearly a healthcare, public health crisis. And crises tend to spur innovation, if we're lucky, and disrupt things if we're not, in some respects. And so I think a lot of people, when they found themselves at home for whatever length of period of time, if they were privileged enough to stay at home, because I think we have to remember that for some folks, they didn't get to stay home during the pandemic, and they had to put on their mask, hope for the best for a while, and go to work every day. But I think it caused a lot of people to think about what they want to be spending their time doing, how and where they want to do it. And the virtual world, I think a lot of people saw that we can work virtually and actually get things done, in many cases more efficiently and effectively than before. So it's totally changed a lot of people's perspective on what's possible.
Well, and I also think it totally disrupted the relationship between employer and employee. Very simple issue. Before the pandemic, the idea of being able to work consistently, routinely from home and get your job done was something that I'd say 90% of employers said, no way in hell.
Yeah.
No, you need to be sitting here in this office, in this cubicle or wherever it is, at your machine during the hours that we tell you need to be there, or frankly, we'll find somebody else who will.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic shows up. Holy crap, we can't all be sitting here. What are we going to do? Okay, well, let's try working from home. And all of a sudden now that's become the new relative normal, where people are able to work from home. But the employers have previously fought against it. The employees have fought for it. Now the employees are getting what they had fought for, and The interesting thing about it, most of the data says they're more productive this way than they were when they were sitting in the office.
Yeah.
Who among us has not had a job where you absolutely hated the job, but you had no real option? You had to do it just to make sure that you could pay the rent and do that stuff, and you drug your ass into that place or wherever it was every day or whenever you were scheduled to work, hating it. Can't waiting to get another job or to find a way out. Who hasn't had that?
Oh, yeah. I've been there a few times.
Well, I think we all have.
Yeah.
And the good news is that you and I and maybe Sander over there had an opportunity and the resources to do something else. But what about the person who has to go to work at ABC restaurant, even though that's not what they want to do, but they really have no skills or options otherwise, or no money to do something otherwise?
Or what if they have to go to work in a place like that during a pandemic when they're scared shitless that they're going to get COVID and die?
Exactly.
Or give it to the grandma and kill her.
You know, now some things can't be done from home. It would be very difficult to have a meat packing facility at home.
Yes.
But you think the people who work in meat packing facilities love it? I would bet you $1 to a donut if you took a survey, 75% of them would say, if I can get the hell out of here tomorrow, I'm gone.
Yeah.
But I can't get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, A, they don't put those things in the middle of downtown Kansas City. B, they're not hiring people with college degrees. C, pays decent money, not great money, but it's enough money depending on where you live and where they are that you can get by, and there's not much better there. And the rest of the time, it's probably in those locations, probably the biggest or second largest business in the entire area anyhow.
Yeah.
So they're stuck there. But then something like a pandemic shows up and you're no longer stuck there, and now you're able, for an extended period of time, not just a day or two, oh, they closed the plant today, I can't go into work today, so I'll just take a day off and watch TV and go in tomorrow. No, you can't go in for the next 2 or 3 months, so what are you going to do? Well, you know, I've kind of always wanted to be an ice cream truck driver. Maybe I can find an ice cream truck to drive, or whatever the case may be. I think that whole shutdown allowed people to re-examine what work really means.
Yeah. Yeah, and what they want to do based on the options available to them.
So a lot of older folks, or a lot of people who had the time and grade, said, the hell with it, I'm out.
Yeah.
And they just resigned, which creates a lot of openings, because one thing that we know is there's more older folks than there are younger folks. So when the younger folks go, it's not there. But look around the grocery stores right now. I'm going to bet that you're starting to see younger and younger people fill some of those jobs, their entry-level positions, whereas before they were being held by adults and younger people couldn't get them. I've seen that happening in a lot of different places where there's younger folks in some of those jobs. There's just not enough of them. But the other thing, too, is that people all of a sudden realize, do I really need to be working 60 hours a week?
Yeah.
Is that healthy?
Yeah.
No, I'd rather not. So I'm not going to do that. Oh, you're going to force me to do it? Bye.
Yeah.
See ya.
It's also been interesting to see how many job postings are completely remote. Like, you can do the job if you get it from anywhere.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see over the next decade what that does to people migration patterns and cities, frankly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what it does to office real estate.
Yeah.
Which is really going to, I think, take it on the chin. It's got to be reimagined.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading an article, I think it was in the New York Times maybe a month ago, that some of the cities that we love, like Austin, San Francisco, very expensive places to live and to try to buy a house and a car, all that stuff. The city officials there are kind of having a no shit moment, because if their workforce is able to move and work from anywhere, if you could go, I don't know, this might not be my bailiwick, but if you could go have a couple of acres in Montana with a pond for $300,000, or a teeny tiny apartment in San Francisco where you got 2 kids, I mean, that's a whole new outlook on life now for some people.
That's absolutely true. It allows for a lot more geographic flexibility. People are able to live wherever they want and still do the job. Or even better, people are able to live where they want and create their own damn job.
Yeah.
Okay, during the pandemic, I had to do something because I needed to make some money. So I started offering out my services as a freelance assistant. So I would be a freelance assistant. I'd work for various people taking care of the stuff that they don't want to take care of, travel like ours.
Yeah.
Travel, typing, whatever the case may be, scheduling, and charge them. And I can have 10, 15, 20 clients, and I can be anywhere in the world and do that.
Yeah.
Unless we have to go to lunch.
Yeah.
But here's another thing, too. Look at the ripple effect that if you don't have your office buildings filled, what's happening to the secondary services that office people use.
Yeah, the cleaning services, the
restaurants.
Yeah.
Restaurants, delivery services, all sorts. Well, delivery might pick up because you might deliver more places. But all the things that are used to support people in a busy environment become less important or less viable because the environment becomes less busy.
Yeah.
There won't be as many people on the street. And that's going to have a ripple effect. So the bottom line is that, and I think it's actually healthy if you want to know the truth of the matter, because we've gotten into this mindset that work was everything. It defined not only who you are, but where you lived, where you sent your kids to school, and who you hung out with. Yeah, it ain't everything.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is all these people that we're talking about, well, this is going to drive me out of business if I have to pay a higher wage. Now they're offering bonuses to get people to come work for you.
Mm-hmm. What does that tell you?
Yeah, it tells you, A, you got the money. B, you can't do it without the people that you had. And the fact that they couldn't make any more money then, that's out the window. Yeah. Now you got to pay them. You got to pay them a higher market rate to get them to do the jobs they didn't want to do at the lower rate but had to.
Yeah.
Because now they figured out, I don't have to.
Yeah.
You want me? You got to pay for me.
Yeah. And of course, there's give and take in everything. We've talked about some of the good byproducts of this new world that some of us who are lucky enough to operate in are doing so now. But I was at a women's leadership conference in October, and one of the things that was a big topic of discussion was the fact that for employers who give the option to work virtually or come back in the office, 9 times out of 10, it's the woman who chooses not to go back into the office to work virtually for a whole host of reasons, usually related to caregiving.
Right.
And we can do a whole podcast, and maybe we should, on childcare.
Oh, yeah.
File that way. But the problem with that is, while women are getting more flexibility, it's that out of sight, out of mind mindset.
Yeah.
And the fear is, if a woman is not in the office, what does that do to be a detriment to her career path? She's not being seen by her manager.
Yeah.
She's not having those relationship building conversations. And so is this actually going to be a negative for women in the long run? It's an interesting thing to think about.
It is. But I'm going to hazard that if that is truly important to that particular woman, they'll find a way to lessen that impact. But on the other hand, I think we ought to also consider the fact that her supervisor may be at home too.
Maybe.
Yeah. Who knows? It's all going to be very much dependent. But it has caused businesses to pivot and to do things differently. And now they're going to have to find a way of doing those things differently that does no harm to individuals like women or people who have traditionally been overlooked in the supply chain. So, yeah, it's out there. And then one of the other negatives, I think, is that there are going to be businesses that fail under this crush.
Already have been.
Yeah, and they just don't. They can't have the manpower. They can't pay the higher wages, etc. But people who are entrepreneurs generally, when they have a business that fails, they find a different business, or they find a way to do something else, or new businesses crop up. So we've seen disruption. But like you said, disruption leads to innovation, and innovation is going to be it. One other additional aspect about the whole jobs thing, to some extent, employers brought this on themselves. They brought this on themselves after the recessions of 2008 and 9 and 10, when they basically said, okay, we've had a recession, so we laid off a whole bunch of people. And then we brought in machines, AI, robotics, or found other ways of having those things do those people's job. Therefore, they said to their workers, you're not important to us. Mm-hmm. Now they're howling because the workers are saying, you're not important to me. Mm-hmm. So the shoe's on the other foot. So the workers had to make the adjustment to when they couldn't come back from the jobless recovery. The employers are having to make having to pivot and make adjustments when they can't to come back from the unemployment recovery.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see the 5-10 year time horizon of the impact of all this, because it's a lot of change and it hadn't been that long. I mean, it feels like a decade to me, but like we've been in this COVID world for not quite 2 years.
Well, one thing that I tell you has already changed, and I think is really somewhat stark, although it was heading this direction anyhow, is I don't care what it is, you can have it delivered.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
You know, I've yet to sign up for Drizzly because I don't drink that much, and I've got this whole stock of alcohol at home. I don't necessarily need it. But the idea that you can call somebody up and order whatever liquor you want and have it delivered, it's absolutely amazing. Whatever you want, I think you can actually live in this society and never have to leave.
Yeah, in most places. Yeah, for sure. I rarely go in the grocery store anymore.
Yeah, you have your stuff delivered. I, on the other hand, being a man of the people, like to hang out with the hoi polloi. I like to touch my fruit before I buy it.
That's what she said, folks. Okay, that sounds like a great place to end this episode today.
Amen. Well, thanks for listening, and be sure to reach out to us if you have any issues, questions, or comments at Wickham James. You can reach Jody or I there through our emails. Certainly, you can leave us a note on our website. Thanks a lot.